On this edition of In the Gun, all right, we've gone through, we've voted, we've discussed the best teams in WVU football history. Unfortunately, now we have to do the other side of that equation. Some of the teams in Mountaineer program history that didn't necessarily bathe themselves in glory. We'll get to all of that on this edition of In the Gun.
Let's go!
You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
Go single! Thomas nuts!
ITG.
With Wes, Owen, and Jed.
What are they called again?
Wes, Jed, and Owen.
That's a West Virginia touchdown!
You end up like a dog that's been beat too much. That's me.
Dude, he is a salty dog.
Dog.
You're a junkyard dog. Yeah. Dirty smelling dog.
Breaks a tackle, heads to the end zone. Another touchdown for the Mountaineers.
I thought we were really physical up front. We looked like we were having a lot of fun.
That there's a Tasmanian devil.
I do a pretty wicked Tasmanian devil.
You sound like you were underwater.
Hold on, you're too close to the microphone.
You sound more like SpongeBob.
Bubble Buddy.
You are In the Gun.
Once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 172 of your new favorite WVU football podcast. I'm Wesley Euler. Alongside the best teammate in the business, we got the signal caller, Jed Drenning, for this edition of In the Gun, presented by our friends at Bet Online, your number one source for all your sports betting needs, from baseball, golf, soccer, all the top fights, and UFC and boxing, and more. They've got every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. And when the game's over, you can head over to their online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slot games. So head to their website or download the mobile app today to get in on the action. Make sure you use the promo code BELIEVE when you sign up for your 50% free deposit up to $250. Make sure you use the promo code BLEAV when you sign up at Bet Online. The game starts here. Jed, in our previous two episodes of In the Gun here, ITG 170 and 171, for those who want to go back and listen, we broke down, we had some conversation, some debates, we got the audience involved with voting to decide the greatest WVU football team of all time. Well, Jed, now, unfortunately, you got to do the other side of the equation, the worst team in WVU football history. Now, we're not going to do a bracket and a big debate and things like that, all right? We don't need to rub that much salt in these wounds, but it's part of the fair and balanced coverage you expect here on ITG, right, Jed? That if we have to discuss the other side of this equation briefly.
The last thing I wanted to do was subject the fans to this. It was more morbid curiosity. So if you were going to stop and take a look at the long history of West Virginia football, we let the fans choose the best teams out of that 16-team bracket. This is the exact opposite. I've combed through what I view to be the 10 worst, and we're going to count them down from the 10th worst down to the worst of all time since 1891.
Oh, Lord.
I considered getting John Antonic on for this one, because he absolutely could add value to this, but I don't want to subject John to it either.
Yeah.
So
I already listen. I mentioned this to you a couple weeks ago. I think it was on episode 170 when we said we'd have to do this eventually. I'm afraid the 2013 team is going to be here. All right, I'm afraid they're going to be on this list. We'll see here in a few minutes. But that, of course, was my senior year, my last year at WVU, and I was pretty stinking spoiled. I mean, you know, every year except for that, we won at least 9 games in football, maybe more. I was there for the Orange Bowl year. In basketball, right, Jed? We won the Big East Championship. We went to the Final Four, a Sweet 16. I mean, my years in Morgantown, I was pretty stinking fortunate. I mean, other than winning a national championship in football or cutting down the nets in March Madness, we did about everything that you could do. But man, I did not go out with a bang. In fact, I went out with a whimper in that final 2013 WVU season. So I'm worried, all right? I'm going to antagonize if that comes up here. But where do we begin? You got some honorable mentions here before we get into the top 10, right?
Some dishonorable mentions, yes.
Okay, I'm trying to be
dishonorable
nice.
mentions.
I'm trying to be nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, this was an exercise in doing things like I did this so fans wouldn't have to. I subjected myself to this So in other words, if it's 2, 4, and 7 teams, I had to pick between them. I had to pick between the 4 and 7 teams.
I subjected myself to this so you didn't have to.
That's right. So let's start with the dishonorable mentions. All right. Dishonorable mentions include the 1999 4 and 7 Mountaineers.
Okay. That was, I mean, I was young, but that's my time.
We were banged up. You can account for a lot of what happened in 1999 through injury, right? We were banged up in 99. 1974, the 4 and 7 Mountaineers.
Before my time. Okay.
We're going to include the 1945 2 6 and 1 Mountaineers. Honorable mention, dishonorable mention. The 1939 2 6 and 1 Mountaineers. And then finally, rounding out our dishonorable mention, we're going to go all the way back to 1896, the 3 7 and 2 Mountaineers.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten over that
right?
season, Jed. I can't believe you brought up 1896. That one still stinks.
That wound is still fresh. Yeah. So that's our dishonorable mention. Now we're actually going to get into the 10 worst teams in the history of West Virginia football.
Oh boy.
Are you
this
ready?
Is like we need the Price is Right. Dun, 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 dun,
yeah.
All right, number 10.
Starting with number 10. Number 10 is somewhat of a curious entry. And what I mean by that is this team was 6 and 3. But I'm going to include them as one of the 10 worst of all time, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
This is why we need John and Tony on here. Already, John would know exactly where I'm going with this. The 1904 6 and 3 West Virginia Mountaineers. Why are they one of the 10 worst teams in the history of the program when they were 6 and 3? Because they got beat 130-0 by Michigan, which to this day is the biggest win in Michigan history. Not just that, Wes. They lost 3 games. They lost 3 games to Pitt, Penn State, and Michigan by a combined score of 217-0. So for the season, when you factor all that in, they averaged, let's take a look, 11 points a game and gave up 26. Because outside of that, not bad. They won 6 games.
Was Fielding Yost the coach at Michigan yet or no?
Yes.
Jed, if this is only number 10, one of our own beating us 130-0 and losing to Penn State and Pitt and getting shut out fast. This is number 10?
Number 10. And easily the only one on here with a winning record. So that's why they're on here.
Tell you real quick, in my 5 years in Morgantown, because I had to take a victory lap, I missed one football game in one home game in my 5 years in Morgantown. It was when we played Norfolk State in that rain game, right?
Yes.
The one where Dana gave the famous speech at halftime that you've referenced before. I went to the Michigan-Notre Dame game with my college roommate whose grandfather played at Michigan at the Big House, okay? It was the college game day game, Denard Robinson versus Manti Te'o. It was the first ever 8 p.m. kickoff at the Big House in 2012 because they didn't have lights at the Big House till like 2010. That's how old school that place is. When we got there and we're doing it's a night game, it's Saturday, we're poking around campus and everything, and my buddy's grandpa who played football at Michigan is giving us all the tours, all the facilities, and he's like, Wes, I got to take you into the hockey rink because he knows, I was a hockey guy. And I see it's called Yost Arena. And I'm like, wait, is this like Fielding Yost that the hockey rink's named after? And he goes, yeah. And I go, oh, so great. Not only did you steal one of our own who became one of the most transformative coaches in college football history, you also got a sick hockey team that wins national championships and plays in an arena named after them. Why don't you twist the knife?
Now the defense would be this, Wes. Some people that, might have an appreciation of the deep history of West Virginia football, that can go back that far, understand what played out there. They might say, yeah, but that Michigan team was really good. Yes, they were. They were unbeaten. They absolutely were. They were really good. But I go back to what I said earlier. They were really good and beat us worse than they've ever beaten anyone. Okay.
And they've played a lot of good football up there in Ann Arbor. Spoiler alert.
They even had they had multiple games where they'd score 100 and some points and shut you out, but never 130-0. That was the worst of all time. So the 217-0 combination in those 3 losses to Pitt, which wasn't even Pitt then, Penn State and Michigan, that brings 1904 to number 10. So let's go to number 9. You already referenced it. Your
Oh,
2013
you're
West
gonna do this
Virginia
to me. You're gonna
Mountaineers
do this
come
to
in
me
at number
back to
9.
You're gonna do this to me
4
back to
and
back.
8. 4 and 8. Now, interesting in the sense that one positive thing came from that season. Two positive, if you can think of, the
I
coming out
decided
party
not to
of,
go to Maryland and get drowned watching us lose 37-0 in Baltimore.
Well, that was the future was being forged with Kevin White and Clint Trickett that season, but we had to pay for it. But the 37-0 loss to the Terps was bad enough already. We finished 4 and 8. We got beat 37-0 at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore by the Terps. Now, here's what's strange. Two things happened the week after Maryland beat us 37-0. You know what those two things are, Wes? Maryland
I don't know.
played Florida State, and Florida State beat them 63-0. The week after beating us 37-0.
So
And
Florida
the
State
next
beat
week,
us. Transitive win 100-0 over us. Florida State got
yes,
there.
that's exactly right. Transitive property, exactly.
Quick math.
So the other thing that happened the week after that, as a 19.5-point underdog, we beat Oklahoma State in Clint's first start. That was the week after the Maryland loss. So that season, yes, the Maryland loss was bad, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think it was as bad as that night at Floyd Casey Stadium. We were down 56-14 at the half to Baylor.
Jed, it also wasn't as bad as blowing a 21-point lead at home to that Iowa State team in double overtime as well, too, on senior day.
Here's how that played out. We'll get
Jed,
back
I remember
that
was my last game. That was my last game as a student, where famously I was on TV in the student section saying some not so kind words. And my family members have that clip. It's out there if you ITG listeners want to go find it.
The Baylor game, we got beat 73-42, and it wasn't as close as the score would suggest. I'm using air quotes if you're not watching on YouTube. And then we got to Waco Regional Airport, and the TSA crew wasn't there. They thought we were flying out the next day. So we had to sit on the team buses after that game, midnight in Waco, waiting on TSA to get scrambled from Dallas. Finally, 4 hours later, we took off. Didn't get home to who knows what time. So that was that night. And then you mentioned the Iowa State game. Let's preface that appropriately. We went to Lawrence, Kansas. We got beat by the Kansas Jayhawks, and that Kansas team snapped a 27-game Big 12 losing streak to beat us. And what I remember about that is at halftime, Dana coming in and telling the team, you think you can go through the motions and do this and do that because of the logo on your helmet? Oh, it's just Kansas. It's just Kansas. Well, don't look now. You are effing Kansas. That was a speech to the team at the half.
It's a good one.
So then that knocked us out of bowl contention. So that put us at 4 and 7. That dropped us to 4 and 7. We knew we were out of bowl. We had to win Kansas and Iowa State to go to a bowl. So we got knocked out of bowl contention.
Well, so this is not modern day Kansas and Iowa State. This is back when they were supposed to be the two easy wins.
Yes. So we got knocked out of bowl contention, then had a bye week. We had to suffer through a bye week, knowing we weren't going to a bowl, to wait and host the 2-9 Iowa State Cyclones to close the season.
On senior day at the last game that Wes Euler ever went to as a student at Mountaineer Field.
Then we blew the lead, and so that's why 2013's on here. For those reasons and more. Let's jump to number 8.
That's 10 and 9. Like, good Lord. Real quick, a big thanks to, because I got to think about something else for 20 seconds here. A big thank you to our guy JR and everybody at Toothman Ford. Back in 1904 and in 2024, we all know cars cost less in Grafton. I know JR was around for that disappointing loss to Fielding Yost and the boys. If Toothman Ford would have been around in 1904, they wouldn't have let Fielding Yost get away to Michigan. All right, they'd have come up with some money to keep them in town. It's a big shout out to everybody.
That's what he did on.
Cars cost less in Grafton.
So we're going to jump to number 8. Wes, I was on only one team at West Virginia.
And this was your fault.
This is my fault. I cursed the 1990 Mountaineers. Now, they finished 4 and 7. They played one ranked team on the schedule and lost. It was a team that, so strange. Talk about playing to the competition. They almost beat a 10-win Louisville team, losing 9-7. But then they played Cincinnati, which was 1-10, and struggled to beat them. So, long story short, it was difficult to come up with. See, what I did was I have like some of the low points in the season as a category that I'm looking at here. And it wasn't one that stands out for this 90 team. It was just the collective. And the collective, for instance, like even in the season opener, I remember in the season opener against, unless I'm mistaken, I believe Garrett Ford Jr. scored on the first play of the game. And we thought, oh, here we go. Well, the next thing you know, we get a big lead and they come back and we're in a dogfight halfway through the fourth quarter against a 2-9 Kent State team. Now, we didn't know that was a 2-9 Kent State team.
Sure.
The 4 wins that year, Wes, came against 4 teams that went 9-34-1. So we weren't very good. So that is number 8.
I think that says it all.
Jumping to number 7, the 7th worst team in the history of West Virginia football, the 1959 Mountaineers that went 3-7. They too stole a win against a ranked team, but they went 3-7. West, and this gets better as the show progresses. They averaged 7 points a game in 1959, not 1859, 1959. They were 110th in the country in scoring, but they made up for it by being 92nd in the country in points allowed.
Well, hey.
So they finished 3-7. They were shut out 4 times.
Punch it out, baby.
And they were outscored on the season by 130 points.
Cool.
So let's hear it or not hear it for the 1959 3-7 Mountaineers coming in at number 7. Let's hit number 6, and then we're going to go to a break, Wes.
Okay.
The number 6 team on our 10 worst Mountaineer teams of all time, the 1986 Mountaineers. They were 4-7. They were 0-2 against ranked teams. Now, those 2 ranked teams were pretty good. They ended up facing each other in the national championship game, Penn State and Miami. West Virginia got outscored by those 2 teams, 77-14.
That's not as bad as I thought it would have been, actually.
Streak. Yeah, well, the Miami game was 42-7 at the half in Morgantown. They lost 58-14 because Miami pumped the brakes and let off the gas in the second half.
Was that
Penn
the
State
famous?
was only
Was that the
19-0.
famous or no? Sorry, I was going to say Catholics and convicts, but that would have been Notre Dame, not Penn State. My fault. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was Notre Dame. Yeah. So that 86 team had a 6-game streak of scoring 16 points or less. And Pitt that year won only 5 games and beat this team 48-16. I think that qualifies as one of your 10 worst teams ever. So the 4-7 1986 Mountaineers, they finished 19th in scoring, 76th in scoring, and 76th in scoring defense.
At least we
weren't very good in 1986, but we were building toward things to come. In 1987, then 1988, the breakthrough, the seeds were being planted. Some of the personnel on that 86 team that suffered through those losses ended up playing for a national championship. Back to you.
Well, that's a positive way to send this one to break here, as we at least, those were some growing pains for those mid to late 80s teams that led to some of the better years in program history. All right, we got to get to a break. There's your honorable mentions in your 10 through 6. Jed will give you the fateless 5. I was trying to think of a really cool name off the top of my head. The Frumpy 5. The Factory of Sadness 5.
It's getting better.
We'll get to the good stuff when we return. Wes Euler, Jed Drenning, you are in the gun.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
ITG will be right back.
He just got drilled and coughed it up. Welcome to the game, Mr. O'Brien. Here's an ice bag. Ouch. Bruce Irvin comes off the edge.
For nearly 20 years, Foris has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Foris offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
If you work the land, you just got to be a jack of all trades type. There's just too much to do. So if you got to be a welder or a farmer or a ditch digger, that's just who you are that day. Then tomorrow, you can be somebody else.
Get your Coyote at the new location of Johnston Equipment between Weston and Buchanan.
Back in the gun. Here we go. I hope you have a cold beverage, a stiff beverage, maybe some Pepto-Bismol, because we are about to find out the 5 worst teams in WVU football history. Before that, another thank you to our friends at Fortis and our guy Rick Lewis for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. You got to visit fortis.us.net. I might go up to my roof and jump off of it after Jed finishes this top 5.
Back to our abysmal 10. 10 worst teams in the history of West Virginia football. We are up to or down to number 5. Number 5, the 5th worst team in the history of West Virginia football. 2001, 3-8 Mountaineers. A year of transition.
Rich Rod's first year.
Coach Rod's first year. So let's talk about one of the reasons it was disjointed. We were transitioning from a pro-style system to a spread system. Yep.
Is this the Rutgers disaster year? Or sorry,
No,
is this sorry,
Rutgers
because we never had any disasters against Rutgers. Was this the Temple at home disaster year? Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yes, this is the team that lost to a 4-7 Temple team.
Oh, Jed, what if I told you that 10-year-old Wes was there?
Okay.
And I think that was the day that 10-year-old Wes, a lot of 4-letter words that he would never forget after that day, hearing them from his uncles and his grandfather.
So we finished 3-8. We played 3 ranked teams, lost all 3. We were outscored by ranked competition 104-16. Now, you mentioned the Rutgers game. Okay. Here's what's crazy. What's to say about that Rutgers team? We beat them 80-7.
That's okay.
Now,
that is what I was.
How did we beat them 80-7? You want to hear the crazy stat from this?
Turnovers, right? I remember. It's all coming back to me now.
Wes, we were +8 in turnover margin against Rutgers, but -8 for the season. Okay.
It's unbelievable.
We were -16 on the road in turnover margin that year.
Unbelievable.
We couldn't hold on to the football to save our lives. So
we were -8 on the season, you said, right? And +8 in that game.
What's that?
So -8 on the season and +8 in that game, right?
8 in that game. That game was 59-0 at halftime.
But their turnover margin on the season was -8, right?
-8.
So it would have been you take that game out of the equation, it would have been -16 on the turnover ratio.
Which Wes, we were on the road. We were -16 just on the road.
Oh,
yes.
Good Lord.
You're talking half the games. So
this one of the Jed. Maybe that season is probably the first season that I really like I remember some games before that. I've told you, I remember in 97 or 98, whenever it was, when Bulger went to Three River Stadium and just dropped bombs all over Pitt. I was there with my mom. I remember some games before that, but this was the first season that, I clearly, the Temple loss and the Rutgers victory are very vivid memories.
I tell you what, the Temple loss was bad, but getting manhandled by Virginia Tech and Morgantown, that was unbearable. That's what I remember from the 01 season.
Got some good vengeance over the next couple years, but yeah.
Yeah, again, seeds being planted because and I've often felt, had Rashid not got hurt early in that season, the dynamic of that season might have been a little bit different.
Maybe you fight
because
for a
now
bowl
you're
game.
building
Yeah.
towards something.
Yeah.
I mean, with poor Brad Lewis, who wasn't a good fit what we were trying to do schematically anyway, you weren't building toward anything with Brad Lewis. If
Right.
Rasheed was in there, A, he was built for what we were trying to do schematically, but B, you would be building towards something with your mission control position at quarterback. So, but anyway, either way, 3-8, the 5th worst West Virginia team in history.
Into
Jumping
the
ahead.
farting 4.
Yes.
The
Number 4.
The
Fourth worst team.
flatulent 4.
The flatulent 4. The 4th worst team in West Virginia football history. I went with the 1950 2-8 Mountaineers. Now they finished 78th in scoring, 105th in scoring allowed. This was reason enough, Wes. They were 2-8. They lost 21-7 to Pitt, which finished 1-8. We were Pitt's only win.
Jeez.
Oh, yeah, that makes you the 4th worst ever. All right, good enough. Bad enough. Jumping ahead to number 3, the 3rd worst team in the history of West Virginia football. What's the era that we haven't touched on yet? That is widely frowned on.
Signetti. We haven't talked any Signetti teams, have we?
There you go. 1978, the 2-9 Mountaineers. We finished the 110th in scoring, 134th in scoring allowed.
Good Lord.
We had 2 wins.
And Jed, how many D1 teams were there back then? Like
105.
And we finished 134th.
So here's the best part, Wes, or the worst part. Our 2 wins, that 2-9 season, they came against 3-8 Richmond and 2-9 Virginia.
Good
Those were
Lord.
our 2 wins. We allowed 49 plus points 4 times. We were outscored by 197 points. Our average game was lost by 18 points. We weren't very good.
When you're losing by 3 touchdowns on average.
Now let's reflect before we hit our final 2, because these are almost in a class of their own here, for 2 different reasons. Okay, so I'm going to send a grid to Skylar.
Real quick, we have not had a winless team yet, correct? I don't think so. No,
not yet.
Okay,
not yet. That's about to change.
You sound like the guy at the end of Gladiator when he's like talking to Russell Crowe. He's like, "I will see you again one day, but not yet, not yet."
That's right, but not yet. And that guy drank himself to death while they were filming the movie.
Yes,
yeah, that actor. Yeah.
So he did. He was going to see him again one day.
Yeah, that's right. So the 2nd worst team in the history of West Virginia football. 1960, the 0-8-2 Mountaineers.
Those are our salutatorians.
This team, their 2 ties came against 3-win teams. They were shut out 5 times. They were outscored by 219 points. Now, they finished 106th in the country in scoring defense, allowing 26 points a game. Don't judge it by today's standard. Judge it by 1960 standards.
It's a lot of points.
Because you want to take a guess how many points in 1960 we averaged per game offensively?
Probably 6 or 7.
4. 4. So now double back to what we said earlier. Remember the 1959 team averaged 7. This 1960 team averaged 4. Can you imagine? What if that was your junior and senior year on campus at WVU and you're going to those games at Old Mountaineer Field? Can you imagine that? You probably saw 5 touchdowns scored by your favorite team. Wow.
3 wins over 2 years.
0-8-2.
Ooh.
Getting shut out 5 times, getting outscored by 219 points. That gets you number 2 all time. Now, number 1.
The valedictorian. Hold on, wait, Jed, before you give us our valedictorian, real quick.
A little trickeration here.
Hold on, real quick, before you give us our valedictorian, a big thank you to the opposite of the worst. That's Johnston Equipment, baby. some of our newer friends here on the program, make sure you're visiting their newest location, Route 33, just outside of Weston. Go buy yourself something nice to get over this depressing episode. All right, Jed, who's our valedictorian? The number one spot, taking home the toilet bowl.
Okay, let's lead up with some hints. This team was quarterbacked by, you ready for this? Gory Hogg from Sewell Station, West Virginia. Gory, Gory, Hogg, like Boss Hogg. Gory Hogg from Sewell Station, West Virginia. They were coached by Frederick Lincoln Emery, a professor of mechanics and applied mathematics on campus at West Virginia University. They played one game. They lost that one game, 72-0. The first ever Mountaineer team. But tip of the cap for trying. Now, the team they lost to, Washington and Jefferson, this was on famously a converted cow pasture in Morgantown. I mean, this is why I wish Antonic was here. He could talk for 2 hours about this game.
Sure.
Now, the W&J team that we lost 72-0 to in that one game, played that one season, 1891. W&J finished 4-2, and this just goes to tell you what a curious game it was in the early years of college football. But even though they finished 4-2, they had a 14. The team that beat us 72-0, Washington and Jefferson, had a 14-0 loss to East End Gymnastic Club. So when you lose your average game 72-0 because you only played one game and that was the score, I anoint you number one, the worst team in West Virginia football history, but somewhat misleading in the sense that at least that's the crew that got it rolling.
Hey,
and
I guess literally from there, Jed, it could have only gotten better, right? I mean, at least they had that going for him. Gory Hogg.
We thought so until 1904 with Michigan. Yeah.
Well, ain't that the truth? Until Fielding Yost really shoved it up our backside. Gory Hogg sounds like, you know how like if they were to make a Spaceballs movie about sports, Gory Hogg would be the Gordie Howe knockoff character.
Where is Sewell Station?
You got Darth Helmet. Here's Gory Hogg.
Where is Sewell Station, West Virginia?
Sewell.
Now I'm curious.
Oh yeah. You got the.
I'm going to Google it real fast, maybe. Unless you beat me to it.
Wait, why is it not?
Okay. Clicking on my map.
I spelled it wrong.
Sewell, like Steve Sewell, that used to play for the Broncos from Oklahoma.
Yeah, I got it here.
It's down by
Thurman,
Babcock
West
State
Virginia.
Park. Yeah, it's by Hawks Nest and Babcock, by Mount Hope.
Yeah, not terribly far from Oak Hill and Mount Hope. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
That's old Gory Hogg stomping grounds.
I hear they still to this day talk about that disappointing loss to W&J to open and close the 1891
Gory Hogg. Yeah. This is her sign up when you pull into Sewell Station.
Grand opening, grand closing.
The population.
We're gonna have to listen at some point in the history of this episode, and sometime in the history of this podcast, Jed, we're gonna have to do a live show in Sewell Station. Now, I don't care if it's like 3. I don't care if it's 3 or 4 years from now. It's gonna have to happen at some point. So everybody, write that down.
Station. Sewell Station's probably an abandoned Dollar General now. Town of Sewell. Okay. Anyway.
Before we go, because as you can see, again, if you're watching on YouTube, this is kind of like the time. Remember when I was in Indianapolis for the Combine last year, and you could see the weather changing behind me throughout the course of the episode at the Lucas Oil Stadium in the background? You can now see the sun blaring right through my face in the basement, which means I got about a half hour, 40 minutes until the sun goes down, which means I need to go cut the grass or my wife is going to divorce me. But before we sign off, you listed the top 10 plus 5 dishonorable mentions, 15 in total. I kept a tally here on my trusty, dusty notebook. Let's call it BW and AW, before Wes and after Wes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
12 of these worst 15 teams came before I was born. Only 3 in my lifetime. So I'm just saying, I mean, since I've been here, things have gotten better. You're welcome, Mountaineer Nation. That's all.
And you know what? Good things typically came after the 3 that you suffered through.
That's exactly right.
It was short-lived, that misery.
Let's hope that continues. Although none of us suffered through last year from a football standpoint, certainly, but maybe basketball. Maybe last year for basketball was the suffering, and now we're going to get it rolling, and football is maybe just a few steps ahead of that curve here. But that was, you know what, Jed? It is, in some ways, it's cathartic. It is fun, as I hesitate to use that word, to look back at some lowlights. But if you can't laugh at yourself, what can you laugh at, really, right? So great work by you, great research, and I'm sure some laughs there for our listeners, I hope.
Sure. I'm glad the research is behind me. Again, I think only Jed Grinning and John Antonik subject themselves to this kind of nonsense. And
That's why we love you, Jed. That's why
I think too much of John to drag him through what we just went through. So that's why I wasn't part of this, because he absolutely could have.
We'll have to get his spark notes on this episode and what he thought, and maybe some little quirks that we missed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Things are going to get better. It's going to get much more exciting as we come down the home stretch of the dog days of summer before camp. We got some, if you want to hit on some of the really cool stuff, starting with Cody Alexander from matchquarters.com, deep dive into the X's and O's of West Virginia.
Yep.
Speaking of deep dives into the X's and O's of West Virginia, Wes, you want to tease?
Yeah, Jed has put together just an incredible, I think we're going to do a two-part episode, the passer and the runner that is Garrett Green. So that'll be coming out here as we get closer to the end of the month and camp beginning. So, yeah, we've got some big guests. We've got some in-depth Garrett Green breakdowns, again, that only people like Jed take the time to do all of these different things. So we're excited. It's exactly right. It is July now, so it's starting to, just a couple more weeks here, and we'll really be like, oh, man, Penn State's on the horizon. So it is that time you start to college football video. Big 12 Media Days, NCAA College Football 25, the return of the video game, just 2 weeks away. So it's exciting. It's always happening fast. And yeah, you know where to find us. You know where to tag along with us the entire way. But some fun off-season content still to come here in the next few weeks before we get to camp time. But that will do it for us today. For our producer, Skylar Callahan, /co-host /everything, the beer truck, Big O, this signal caller, Jed Drenning. I'm Wesley Euler. The one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Also, make sure you're going to the WVU Sports social accounts on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you get it, because they just did a really cool 2-minute interview with our guy, Big Daddy Sean Mariner. It's up on Jed's Twitter.
I'm glad you gave a shout out.
Again, if you go on Facebook, if you go on Instagram, on the WVU Sports official accounts, you will see the video there. Really cool, just 2-minute Sean kind of telling his story of what he does for a living and how much WVU means to him. And that was pretty cool for us to see as well, too. So make sure you're giving our buddy Big Daddy.
I mean, that's what we do here. We bring people on the show, whether it's Charles Wesley Godwin, now he's selling out stadiums, whether it's Philip Bowen, now he's selling out shows, or whether it's Big Daddy. Now he's on to bigger and better things. Well, Kingmaker's here at In the Gun.
That's exactly right. I mean, Pat White and Steve Slayton, they'll be Steve will be the next Gordon Ramsay in a few months, and Pat eventually will, much like Joe Mazzulla, lead some professional sports team to a championship before too much longer as well, too. But it's been fun. We will continue along, like we said, for July. Thanks for rocking and rolling with us throughout the offseason. Take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. You've been In the Gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.